Hello and welcome to Watch Recycle. My name is Chris, and today I have a Luminox Navy Seal 3000 version 2 quartz watch that I purchased off of eBay for $39. The listing said the second hand had previously fallen off but was reattached by a watchmaker, but has since fallen off again, and that the rubber strap was chewed by the dog. So the watch also came with its original case, which is a pretty nice plastic case, and included the original documentation, including the warranty card and the owner's manual, the instruction manual. So we're going to put that to the side now and get to work on the watch. I'm going to take a look at the watch, and we see that second hand is just bouncing around inside the case in the dial. So that's not good. It can cause a lot of damage inside by just bouncing around in there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove these rubber straps. I'm going to take my spring bar tool and I'm gently going to detach the spring bars, making sure not to damage the side of the case with the spring bar tool. We have some dirt and debris that has come out off the case back. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these spring bars, and I'm going to save them so I can reuse them. These are good heavy duty spring bars, so we want to keep those. We'll set those off to the side. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to remove some of this dirt and debris from the outside of the case. So I'm going to take a piece of pegwood, which is just a small piece of wood that's been sharpened, and I'm gently going to try to scrape away any loose dirt and debris on that case so it doesn't fall into the case back in the movement once I open it up. So we'll knock that off and clean that up before we go ahead and remove the case back. Now I'm taking a look at the crystal here, and as I'm looking at it, at the 6 o'clock position, I can see there's a big gouge in the crystal. So I'm going to take my spring bar tool just to see and put it in there, just to see if it goes all the way through, to make sure no water can get through there. It doesn't look like it's deep enough to get water, but it's definitely scratched. It needs definitely cracked. It needs to be replaced. There's also another gouge in the crystal at the 7 o'clock position. Looks to me like somebody has tried to pry this crystal off from the top side. It failed, but totally damaged the crystal, ruined it. So we're going to have to go ahead and replace that crystal too. So now I'm going to use a small Phillips screwdriver and remove the 4 screws that are in the back. As I'm doing that, I'd like to welcome you to my channel. This is a new channel, and my goal here is pretty simple, just to take watches that have been set aside by other people, given up on, and just restore them and get them back on the wrist and get them back in service again. And hopefully by you watching these videos, maybe you'd like to try to do the same thing too. Now I'm going to use my screwdriver, and I'm gently going to separate the case back from the case. Let's take a look and see what we have here. And on the inside of the case back, we actually see that there's some writing. It's a watchmaker's mark, and it says on October 11th, 2023, the second hand was reset. So that repair obviously failed, and we're going to fix that today. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the movement ring that keeps the movement snug inside the case back. Just take that plastic ring out, and we're going to set that on the side. Now I'm going to take a quick look around, looking for any visible signs of damage to the movement, and looking for any maybe water incursions into the movement, but everything's looking good. No water, no visible damage right now. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the movement from the case. In order to do that, I'm going to set the hour and the minute hand to the 12 o'clock position so that I can remove the hands later. And then I'm going to pull out the winding stem to the second position. Now on the back of the movement, there's a small hole right above where the winding stem goes in, and I'm going to gently take the back of my spring bar tool around its side, and I'm going to gently press on the tab that's in there, and it releases the stem. So very gently, it just comes right out. No force needed. Now I'm going to flip the movement over and remove the case from the movement. Just lift it right off. Now, I'm going to take a look here. We can see the hand, the second hand. We're going to go ahead and remove that. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the movement with the dial and the chapter ring into a movement holder that's going to hold it steady so that I can work on it. In doing so, I'm going to be very careful not to separate that chapter ring from the dial itself, because if I do, those tritium tubes that provide the illumination for the watch are going to spill all over the place, and it's going to be a mess to put those back together. So I'm going to be real careful not to separate that from the dial. Next, I'm going to insert a piece of cardboard here between the dial and the hands so that I can use the Presto tool to remove the hands. Now, normally you could get all the hands off at once, but with these Luminox watches, the tritium tube requires a lot of spacing between the hands. So I have to remove each hand separately. So we have the minutes hand off, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the hour hand. Now, spoiler alert here, the hour hand does have some damage on it from that seconds hand bouncing around inside the case. It has actually loosened the tritium tube off the hand, and it's starting to detach. I'm going to try to see if I can get by with it, but as we go on and start the reassembly process, that's not going to work, and we're going to actually have to reattach that tritium tube. But for now, we've got the hands off. Take a look at everything. Looks good. Now I'm going to put the hands into a small membrane box that helps protect them so they don't get damaged any more than they already are while we continue our disassembly. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look along the actual movement itself, and there's going to be a notch in the movement for me to put a screwdriver in there to slowly begin to separate the movement from the dial. Now, I'm not going to pry it off. I'm just going to start it and gently go around and separate it as we go around. Because if I pry it off from one side, I'm probably going to break off one of the dial feet and ruin the dial. So, just going to slowly work our way around, take our time, and then we'll get it to pop right off. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove this crystal from the case. I'm going to use my crystal press and I'm gently going to press it out from the inside. I'm going to be careful when I'm doing this because there is a crystal gasket that's on there. We don't want to damage that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that crystal gasket and take a look at what we have here. That's the case and the case back. We're going to put that in the ultrasonic cleaner and clean that up real good before we reassemble it. There's our crystal gasket, and here's the original acrylic crystal. Take a look at that gouge. Yep, that's a pretty big gouge, just all chewed up. Just a total hack job on that crystal. So I've gone ahead and cleaned our case in the ultrasonic machine, nice and clean. I've lubricated the crystal gasket with some silicone grease, and I'm gently going to slide the gasket back into its groove in the case. Taking my time here to make sure we don't pinch the gasket or tear the gasket, and just gently take our time and work it back into the case. Now once I have it in, I'm going to use this plastic pointer stick and just run it around the edge to make sure that it's properly seated into its groove before we go ahead and press that crystal in. Now, I've decided to replace the acrylic crystal with an upgraded flat sapphire crystal. It's 28 millimeters by 2 millimeters thick. It cost me about $25 as compared to $3 for the acrylic crystal, but it's much more scratch resistant. So since I have it apart, I'm going to go ahead and upgrade the crystal. Now what I'm going to do is put the crystal face up, the case face up into the crystal press, and I'm going to drop the crystal in. Now I'm going to gently put a little tension on it, not pushing it in, but just putting a little tension on it, just to hold it in place until I can get everything lined up to where I want it to be. And once everything lines up perfectly, we'll go ahead and gently push the crystal back into the case to set it, just like that. I'm going to check it all around to make sure it's seated on all sides, and it is, and now we're ready to start reassembling. Now what you're looking at here is a new movement that I had to purchase because the old movement, in inspecting it under the microscope, this post for the second hand was damaged, and that's why the hand kept falling out. This is a Ronda 515 movement, which I purchased for $19.95, and it's an exact replacement. So I'm going to drop the dial. I'm going to line up the dial feet back into the movement. Once I get them lined up, I'm gently going to press to make sure I don't bend or break those dial feet. And just go around and press the dial in. Now I'm going to put the hour hand back on. I'm going to line it up. I had already set the date to roll over at the 12 o'clock position. Once I do that, I can set the hands at the 12 o'clock position. The hour hand goes on and gently press it on with our hand pressers. We'll do the same thing for the minute hand. We'll get it lined up at the 12 o'clock position and we'll gently press it on. I'm going to check to make sure that everything's lined up, that the hands are not rubbing or making contact to the dial, and everything looks like it's lined up, so we're ready to put our second hand back on. Now, I'm trying to put the second hand back on, and I'm fought with it for a long time, and it just does not want to go back into the new movement. And what I found out is, after looking at the hand under the microscope, it's the post on the second hand is also damaged, and that's why it won't fit into the movement. And in doing so, working with it, trying to get it into the movement, trying to straighten it, trying to get it to fit right into the movement, and doing all of that, we wound up having a tritium tube on an hour hand that was loose, detached, and there it is, it's out. So it's still tacky. Give it one more shot, try to get it to stick, but it's not going to. We're going to have to address that. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. We'll set that to the side, and I'll come back and get that reattached. But for now, I'm going to focus on getting the second hand reattached. I had to go to my parts box, and I did have another Luminox second hand for this movement. Exact same one, but this one's white instead of the original black. It dropped right in to the new movement, and a quick push and it sat right in place, and there it goes. So we're back together. So now we have to address that tritium tube. So what I have here is some super glue gel. I only use the gel, not the liquid, because the liquid is just too messy. I'll put a small drop in the groove on the second hand, on our hand, and I'm going to gently reset the tritium tube in there, just taking my time to work it into place. Now, when this super glue dries, it dries crystal clear, so you won't even know that this repair has been made. So we're going to line it up, and then we're going to let it set and dry. Once it's dry, we're ready to put everything back together. We have our case with our crystal installed already. I have here the gasket for the case. I've already lubed it with the correct silicone lube. Set that into place. Now I'm going to take some air, and I'm going to make sure we get all the dust out of the crystal, any dust remaining in the crystal, so it's clean. We do the same thing for the dial. Blow off the dial, and we're ready to reset the movement back into the case. We're going to line up the hole for the stem with the case, and we're going to drop it right in. The stem will slide right in the hole, no force needed. It'll click right in, and then we're going to go ahead and put the movement ring back in. This one fits pretty snug in there, so we're going to use our fingers to gently push it down into place. Now we're ready to put the case back on. We're going to put the 4 screws in, and we're going to get those tightened down. I'm going to go ahead and get them all started, but I'm not going to get them snug, but I'm not going to tighten them down until all 4 screws are in, and then I'll put the final tightening on them. Now for this watch, I'm going to go ahead and reuse the spring bars. Those are good heavy-duty spring bars. So we'll get those tightened down, and then we're going to move on to putting the spring bars in. We're going to line up our spring bars, and we're going to use our spring bar tool to gently put the spring bars back in place, making sure not to scratch the movement with the tool. First one in. We're going to go ahead and put the other one in. Now with this watch, I decided to go with a 22 millimeter NATO strap as opposed to the original rubber strap that was on the watch. I like to wear my NATO straps in the single pass position, so we're going to modify the NATO strap to remove the second pass through, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. I'm going to take the NATO strap and I'm gently going to cut off the end, just like that. Now I'm going to use some heat and I'm going to seal it with a low flame. I'm not going to pass it through the flame. I'm just going to put it by the heat so it melts it, because we don't want it to catch on fire. So just a quick pass through the heat, seal it up, and it'll be ready to go. And there we have it, a single pass NATO strap. Now I'll take it and feed it through the movement, through the spring bars, just like a belt. Pull it tight, and there we go. Go wipe down the crystal, get any smudges or anything off the crystal, make sure it's clean, and take a look at that. Finished watch. Replace the movement, replace the second hand, replace the crystal, and a new NATO strap. It's ready to go on the wrist. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. We're going to call that a win. It's ready to go back on the wrist. And I'll see you in the next one.